The year-long chase for Savinho is finally coming to an end as Tottenham get their man. Or should I say men? Because Omar Marmoush looks to be following his Brazilian mate. But what can the City duo bring to Tottenham? From Savinho's elite 1v1 ability to Marmoush's top-tier ball striking and 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏's plan for both, I'm 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗏's FourFourTwo's resident tactician, and this is why Tottenham desperately need Savinho and Marmoush.
Savinho and he knew nothing about it.
Savinho would likely be on the left wing in a 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 team, looking to get right toward the touchline, like seriously toward the touchline, to stretch the opposition's defence and midfield as much as possible. But what if I told you that wasn't the only path that we may see Savinho going down at Tottenham? At Man City, he played 23 times off the left wing, but also played 26 times at right wing. However, his roles in both those positions were massively different. On the right, he'd start high and arrive deep to create separation from his marker. His role was to quickly combine and drive in that inside right area. Pep looked to use his ability to come deep and drag players with him to create space down that right channel for other players, which is something I think 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 will like, because that ability to combine in tight areas gives you solutions in high pressure scenarios. But that right wing Savinho that does that is entirely different to a left wing Savinho. Here he's right by that touchline. Most players would typically take a touch inside or maybe on the outside, close to their body in order to protect the ball as a priority. But Savinho takes his touch away from his body and straight into a take-on, beating his marker and allowing him to deliver early into the box. Now that's probably his best trait. That 1v1 ability from the Brazilian can be terrifying. And off the left, when he's wide right by the touchline, that's exactly what he wants to do. And he's able to do that because he's such a highly technical footballer that he doesn't require a touch to set himself up for the take-on. His first touch can lead him into that dribble, and that's dangerous. Because once he does that, he then has space by the byline to deliver into the box early with his next touch. Whether that's a cutback or a lofted cross, he has the pick of the bunch. On the right-hand side, that's different. As you see here, he beats his man on the right and gets into that byline space. But his preference is to chop onto his left foot, and therefore Newcastle can get back and close his angles off, eliminating the effectiveness of arguably his best trait, which is those quick take-ons and early deliveries, and some of them deliveries are top class. Feels like a little bit of a waste, because on the right, it's just not quite as effective.
It must be for Marmoush! Omar Marmoush!
Now, Omar Marmoush is a different situation entirely, because Savinho's leaving probably because he's surplus to requirements, whereas Marmoush, I think he's leaving because of more of a profiling issue. Man City need this number 10 to be a proper creator, so that 𝗘𝗫𝗓𝗏 Haaland can do all that beautiful forward aggressive attacking stuff. But Marmoush isn't a creator. He's a shooter, he's a ball striker, he's a goal scorer. So if he was to actually play for City, he probably fits in place of Haaland, which he's obviously never going to do. However, if we look at Spurs' attack from the Brentford game, there's a few things missing, and even if we scrap all of that and pull up their probably best attack at the current moment, there's still a fair bit missing from that team. You've got James Maddison's slick passing, you've got Savinho's brilliant crossing, and you've got Kudus's relentless 1v1 threat. But there's no shooters here. There's no ball strikers. There's no... Where are the goals coming from? I can't see who's going to score the goals here, which is where Marmoush, as the number 9, comes in and gives them new avenues. He can drift onto the blind side of his marker and has such a wide variety of finish. In this case, he decides to reverse it into the far corner. But he has just such a good ball striking technique that he can give you just a wide range of different ways to score goals, and means he can finish chances, whether they're half or full chances, and score goals. Which is something, I mean, if you watch the Brentford game, Spurs need a lot more than that, but they do also need a ball striker, a goal scorer. Last season, 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 topped Spurs Premier League goal tally, but as we know, a lot of them were then games were getting a little bit scrappy and he was coming off the bench. Equally, as we know with 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏, not to be too rude here, but the bloke literally cannot stay fit. You're not going to get a consistent stream of goals from the Brazilian because he's never there. He's always injured, which means for me, Marmoush as that leading player who can play majority of games and then has a nice creative supporting 3 behind him is so much better. I mean, if we look at his time at City, he managed 10 Premier League goals in just 37 league appearances. However, having a consistent goal stream is one thing, but as we know with 𝗫𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏, his football isn't just about direct goal threat consistently, trying to just get from one end of the pitch to the other as quick as possible. That's not necessarily 𝗫𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏 ball. So what else can Marmoush bring that allows 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏's football to work with him as a number 9?
It's a big challenge for me, and I'm looking forward.
𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏's build-up creates these sort of fabricated transitions where the opposition are baited out and then Tottenham's attack is left in a bunch of 1v1s with the opposition's defence on the halfway line with massive space to attack in the opposition's half. Now, we've already talked about Savinho and how he can operate in sort of tight conditions and find you some nice solutions which will be really valuable, I think, in those 1v1s if he receives defeat. But Marmoush also has some really nice ball carrying over big distances, which I think will work when getting from the halfway line to the final third. His burst of acceleration in that open space whilst keeping the ball close to him allows him to push defences back, but also keep separation from his marker, which is nice for Tottenham to have and will be important for them, I think, when they are breaking through, when they get those self-made counter-attacks, so to speak. But from Savinho, we'll probably need a little bit something different in those types of areas. Now, in pre-season, Tottenham have used that sort of 3-1 setup with 2 players operating ahead of that 3-1 in the pockets. The reason I mention that, and I mention the build-up, and I mention the midfield, and we'll come back to Savinho, is because for the midfielders to get into the pockets, the opposition's midfield needs to be stretched by width holders on the wing, which is how I see Savinho at Tottenham. Someone who isn't just a width holder, but someone who's basically in the stance, is that far wide, looking to stretch that opposition defence and then create those little pockets of space for other players. Because if one of those pocket players gets on the ball, the opposition defenders have to move narrow to win that ball, meaning Savinho will instantly have separation from his marker and will be able to manipulate the defender with small touches before bursting to the byline. For Spurs, that's so useful, not only for the pocket players, not only for Savinho, but also for the right winger and the centre forward. But I've got a question. I have to lean in for this one. What if Kudus and Savinho switch wings? Does that still work for 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏? Because it's something that may well happen in the season. Well, with 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏's 6-man build-up looking to bait the press, as we've already established, I think Savinho could have a role to potentially play in this. When I look at the midfield that Spurs have right now, it is so much better than last season's, don't get me wrong, and I'm not being a Debbie Downer here, but for me, 𝗘𝗫𝗓𝗏 playing as the sort of deep pivot player, the number 6 sort of role, I don't necessarily is always going to be the best case for Tottenham, because I still don't think he's the most secure player in possession, and at times I'd actually rather him be someone who's breaking the line with darting runs into the sort of attacking line of Tottenham's team, which is where Savinho in this position dropping into that mid-third of the pitch adds value, because he simply finds solutions to evade pressure and get out of those tight conditions. Now, I'm not saying we're going to play Savinho as a number 6, do not get me wrong, don't get me twisted for 1 second. But what I am saying is that I think he could drop in at times when, let's say, Tottenham are trying to play in transition and he comes to get on the ball. Or let's say Tottenham are trying to use a little bit more rotation in that midfield area. I think Savinho could be someone who arrives deeper, gets on the ball, turns and gets Spurs going forward. Like here with City under pressure and a defender arriving on his back, Savinho arrives deep and instantly takes progressive action with a step inside, and then he drives forward the ball before slipping Haaland through on goal. At Spurs, he'd be slipping through Omar Marmoush, and I think as much as it's not Erling Haaland, that's still a really nice dynamic. These positions where Marmoush is running onto a ball inside the box aren't his favourite shooting positions, but his finishing variety means even then he can score in those situations. So, especially after a pretty toothless performance against Brentford, I think the creativity of Savinho and the goals and shooting potential of Marmoush should be really, really exciting for Tottenham fans. However, I do also get the reservations around Savinho because of his lack of goal output at Manchester City. But if we compare his shot map last season against his Girona shot map, you see at City, more shots came off the right, whereas Girona, where he scored a fair few, most of his shots appear on the left side of the box. That's because he was primarily a left winger in La Liga. Now, Pep looked to use him as a right winger potentially because of that ability to evade pressure, be a little bit more secure in swinging crosses to Haaland, things like that. But at Tottenham, he will be a left winger, where he can arrive and shoot across his body, which I think is probably his favourite shooting sort of technique. So I do think under 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 he'll be on the score sheet a little bit more often. Maybe not 15 goals, but a nice little handful, which will be good for them. Now I want you to answer this question. Are you subscribed to FourFourTwo? Next question. Why aren't you subscribed? Because we'll be back again next week with some more analysis, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So I'll see you lot in the next one. See you in a bit.